World War 3 is a game that I've been covering for a very long time. 3 years ago this game dropped, it did absolutely terribly and wasn't in a very good state. So they went back to the drawing board, even got an entirely new publisher, and now World War 3 is back into the wild. A lot has changed since the last time many of you publicly saw World War 3. The game has had complete redesigns of the entire animation system, gunplay, and pretty much every core mechanic has been polished. The entire game has been completely optimized, completely changed in some areas, and is trying to stick towards a playable realism environment that feels as though Battlefield 4 and Insurgency Sandstorm came together and created a game. I'm excited to bring you guys my updated closed beta test impressions because this is a game that I've been covering for many years. And if you're interested in trying World War 3 in the closed beta environment before it enters free-to-play access in 2022, then feel free to check out the link in the description below. Through that link, you can check out all of the available closed beta testing packs, and the lowest one costs $14.99, which is a very low price if you're interested in early access, and there are a couple of others if you want some cosmetic items. Now, just for full disclosure, if you do happen to use this link, my games and the people behind World War 3 have actually given me this link, so I will get a bit of a kickback if you guys happen to purchase this. So for disclosure's sake, although this video isn't sponsored and this isn't an advertisement for the game, I do have an affiliate link if you are interested in trying it out. The best description I have for World War 3 is if somebody had tried Battlefield 4 and decided that they wanted a slightly more hardcore experience. It truly feels as though the features of Battlefield 4 have been melded together with the features of games like Insurgency Sandstorm to produce a very powerful experience that is a hardcore-esque system, that has a good gunplay system, some really redeeming features about the game, the most extensive customization system I've seen in any video game really, and a couple of flaws here and there. Considering this is a closed beta test, there's definitely a lot of time between now and the free-to-play release of the game for things to be polished and things to be improved. And there are very few areas where critical flaws stand out to me, except for audio, but even then there's a bit of a silver lining to some of the news in that department. So we're going to go over everything, an overview of the game, the customization system, some of the quality of life improvements, the modes and maps, gunplay, audio, and concerns that I have. So World War 3 has had a full overhaul since its official release in 2018. Completely back to the drawing board with fully redesigned ballistic systems, audio systems, optimization systems, and it feels like an entirely new game. And I think that's the best way to approach World War 3's re-release, as though it had been completely changed and revived and is in itself a new title. Now, the game features two distinct modes, a tactical ops mode which resembles Chainlink from Battlefield 4, and Team Deathmatch, and I imagine we'll see more modes in the future as well. So effectively a Conquest/Chainlink hybrid is the central focus of World War 3, featuring 40 players. Now, although this isn't the highest player count in the world, it works for the maps that the game has at hand, and honestly, I don't really have any complaints. So long as the game flows well, the player count number really doesn't concern me. World War 3 effectively tries to be a more hardcore Battlefield experience, and at times it goes from being really fast-paced to really slow-paced, and it's a nice mix and concoction of things that happens to work. There are times where it feels like a traditional Battlefield experience, and times where it feels like you're playing Insurgency, and both of those lend to each other in quite a good way, so that you get these really good moments of intensity and really good moments of tension as well. And World War 3 as a title prides itself on a sort of hardcore, customization-based system that allows you to play the game how you want, as aggressively how you want, with armor, weight to your weapons, with various different attachments, uniforms, and a personal touch to effectively everything in the game. So before we dive into the features of the game, let's talk about optimization. World War 3 definitely runs a hell of a lot better than it ever did before, and I was getting in and around the region of about 150 frames, which is pretty happy for me, considering 144 Hz is my monitor refresh rate. Now, it runs incredibly well on my system, which is a 5950X and a 3080, and I consider the frames that I'm getting on high, which bearing in mind is, pretty pumped up settings, to be really good. And I imagine this will scale quite well to lower end systems, and the developers did note that turning off volumetric fog will drastically improve performance for people on lower end systems. But overall, optimization is great. This game runs really well. There are a few hitches here or there where the frame rate dips a little bit, but nothing that can't be smoothed out in the future. but I was very happy with the FPS. I think this is something that is often underlooked, especially in early access titles and titles that are going into closed beta environments, but I was pretty happy with what I saw in this department. Let's talk customization, because this is just ridiculous. Customization in World War III is the most advanced customization system I think I've ever seen in any modern shooter. And whilst it's super impressive, it probably will pose a couple of concerns in the future in terms of balancing, but it's just insane amounts of freedom of choice. You're talking barrel changes, you're talking attachment changes, you're talking optic changes, skin changes, alternate optics, flip-up optics, laser sights, stocks. It's truly just utterly mental. Like, there isn't a way that I can describe the customization system in World War III other than, if you want it, it's probably in the game. You can change your character's uniform, headgear, the way they talk, whether or not they represent a certain nationality. My soldier happens to be British, for example, and I've made him a British soldier. And you can change everything. You can change all of the cosmetics of the physical character model, all of the cosmetics of the weapon models, and of course you can change all of the attachments on the weapons. And you level up your weapons in-game, and cosmetics can both be earned in this game and also purchased from the store of the game, which currently isn't active. There will also be cosmetics through the game's Battle Pass system, but again, this is a free-to-play title, so expect cosmetic purchases alongside a Battle Pass system here. The customization of this game is utterly bonkers. If you want to create a CQB M4 or a long-range DMR style M4, you absolutely can. And the gunplay experience for this game is very, very good, and each attachment lends itself to different playstyles. And it's truly mind-blowing. This is Modern Warfare 2019 and then some, with even more tacked onto it, with every single attachment in the game actually explaining in real statistical terms what it changes with your individual weapons. World War III's customization system is vast. Both the weapons you have, the snipers, the DMRs, the LMGs, they all feature very extensive customization, and the character models are a welcome addition as well. I, for one, really like the fact that I can have a British soldier, but you can pretty much do whatever you want. I'm expecting the experience grind to unlock attachments for weapons to be quite long in this game as it's free to play, but again, there's just so much of it, and it's really promising. The next thing I wanted to talk about is quality of life, because World War III has very good quality of life settings in the game. Stuff that you would expect from any traditional Battlefield game, for example, is in World War III, including basic things like scoreboards. But effectively, World War III takes it a step further. Scalability, opacity for anything that's available in the HUD, the ability to disable and enable specific elements of the HUD, a full audio system with audio mastering, different audio profiles, the ability to change different HUD icons' colors, change the color of your friendly opponents, your squad mates and enemies. If you can think about it, it's effectively there in terms of a customization option. And the quality of life extensiveness here is really, really good. It's an expectation that you would expect from a AAA shooter from a top flight game industry, and this happens to be in World War III. And I found it super useful. I already scaled down my HUD, slightly reduced the opacity because I'm more of a sort of in-game purist who doesn't like HUD elements, and I turned off things like the kill feed and the chat because personally I don't really care much for those things, and it's just really great to see these in-game. You can even select your individual inputs and outputs for your microphone, and even adjust the volume on the fly from the in-game menu for the in-game VoIP system, which does exist in World War III. So super promising stuff just from the jump here. The quality of life setup in this game is exactly what you would expect from a polished and finalized Battlefield product, and World War III happens to hit all of the marks on this. In terms of in-game quality of life stuff, there's things there that you would expect from other titles, such as leaning, the ability to prone backwards, and even crouch running. Diving on into the modes and maps, and the maps at the moment, there are 5 of them, which are the tactical ops experience with smaller variants for their team deathmatch counterparts. And these maps feel very well lived in. They feel like battle-hardened experiences, and they have a decent atmosphere to them. Although I wish some of them had a bit more of an ambient audio background going on, and a few more visual effects such as weather and rain, they do look and feel pretty great, and they look as though they are combat zones, which is a really nice touch. I definitely want to see a few more visual effects, a bit more dynamic audio and a bit more dynamic atmosphere in terms of some rain, you know, a couple of background things going on, just to really amp up the atmosphere in these maps. But they do feel like combat zones as a basic level and don't feel too sterile, which is a very good addition. The modes at the moment are super simplistic. The first one is Tactical Ops, which is a chain link / domination style setup, or conquest style setup if you're used to Battlefield terminology, and effectively you have to capture 2 or 3 of the same objectives, so A1 and A2, B1 and B2, C1 and C2, which will effectively form a link, and that link then imposes a ticket count on the enemy team. Moving on to Gunplay, and this is where World War III really shines. World War III has a full-on ballistic style system which feels fantastic. The time to kill is a little bit snappier than a game like Battlefield, and somewhere in between a sort of insurgency and Battlefield feel overall. The gunplay is super aggressive. You expect things like recoil to be a very real factor in things that you do, and also range and damage drop off as well. If you use an AR, it's an AR. It has its intended ranges. Same for SMGs, which have their own intended ranges, so on and so forth. And this game isn't afraid to challenge people to try things differently. You cannot full auto somebody who is a far distance away from you. Expect to tap fire or introduce changing fire modes to single fire or burst fire on the depending weapon that you happen to have to hit targets at range. And it's a really rewarding system. There have been moments where I've had to switch to single or burst fire in order to accurately take out an opponent, and it works, and because they're trying to full auto me at range, I am the successful victor in that outcome. The game features an armor system as well, where helmets and the chest pack can offer a small amount of protection against certain rounds, and the higher caliber the round in terms of armor piercing, the more damaging it can be, and different ammo types have different damage protocols. But really interestingly, and one of the things that makes for a satisfying experience, is every single death cam in the game features a full breakdown of the damage done to you by who and where it hit you on your body, illustrating whether or not your strike pack or your armor pack actually protected you, or if they managed to hit other extremities, the neck or the head. And if you hit face on, there is no protection whatsoever. So don't expect the helmet to be a full-on application in terms of defenses. If somebody shoots you in the face, you're gonna die. This is a super satisfying part of World War III, and the gunplay is something that I thoroughly enjoyed. Not only is it challenging, but it's also rewarding. I really wish that the guns had better audio, and audio is something we are going to touch on next, but other than that, they feel good. The gunplay feels good. I just wish that guns had a meatier sound in this game. At the moment, they all sound like airsoft guns. There is a certain degree of satisfaction of using different types of weapons as well. SMGs feel like SMGs, and DMRs feel like DMRs. They feel like they have unique qualities that make them all uniquely useful. Now let's talk about audio in World War III. Now one of the trade-offs of having so many weapons and so many attachments is that a lot of the guns feel very samey, and the audio generally speaking feels very flat and doesn't feel very dynamic. Positional audio is decent. You can actually sometimes hear where the footsteps are coming from, but it certainly isn't perfect. On the headphone mix using a very expensive headset, I found that the audio was okay positionally, but felt very tinny. The weapons themselves sound like airsoft weapons as opposed to regular weapons, and I really wish there was a bit more mustard behind the sounds, because if there was, the gunplay experience would be all that more satisfying. Now this is something that's set to improve, and the developers have acknowledged that audio is not where they want it to be, and in the future they're going to have head-related transfer functionality in the game. And for those of you who are unaware or don't know what HRTF is, it's effectively a way of balancing the audio in the game and manipulating the audio within the engine to produce a surround sound audio system that allows people to positionally audio identify targets easier. So effectively, this is something that exists in Valorant at the moment, which is a competitive shooter, and allows players to effectively have a dynamic audio mix that helps things with gunfire and positional footsteps, and muffles away other sounds. It's kind of like a dynamic mix for competitive gaming, and it's really exciting, and something that will be fully implemented when the game goes free to play. Whether or not the gun audio sounds will improve much between now and then though, I don't really know, and I really hope we do get to see some traction on this. Finally, let's move on to concerns, because although this game has a lot of promise and is very good, there are some areas where the game definitely falls a little bit flat. Audio especially was one of them that I mentioned, but there are a couple of places as well. The animation system still sometimes feels a little bit janky, and although they've done a really good job of overhauling a lot of the animations, the transitions between animations and the overall fluidity of the game still needs another layer of polish. It's something that's better, but could be even better, and is nowhere near a title like Modern Warfare 19 or Battlefield, and is the kind of thing that I hope we get to see improve. There's also definitely some issues with the character movement as well. Player models sometimes move around a little bit weirdly, and it's difficult to track and trace and understand the movement system, and the sliding as well kinda feels a little bit robotic in places, and I hope we get to see a couple of changes on that spectrum to make the animation system a little bit more functional. The final thing for me is the meshing system. There are a lot of times where players run into certain objects or different varied terrains that has terrain deformation, and you can very clearly see that the character model isn't adapting to the terrain as they should be. Next up is balancing. With a game that has so many attachments, so many weapons, and even vehicles such as IFVs and tanks, there's definitely going to be balancing issues in World War III, especially as players progressively figure out objectives and setups that will allow them to manipulate gameplay. If somebody figures out that a certain build of a certain weapon is super overpowered, it's going to be on the development team to very quickly modify and adapt statistics on the fly. So hopefully we see that, but honestly, I'm a little concerned in this region. It's kind of an Occam razor principle. There are so many entities at hand here, both in terms of the base weapons themselves and the attachments, that it's very, very tricky to identify how they're going to balance this game effectively, but hopefully we don't see huge difficulties in this area. The final concern really is a mixed bag depending on how you look at things. World War 3 is free to play, and it will be free to play when the game officially comes out of closed beta testing, and again you can get early access by checking out the link in the description below. But the issue with that is that there are some concerns around how free to play is going to be handled in this title. For example, I don't want people to be able to buy weapon blueprints that come with attachments that means they automatically kind of get an advantage on other players, especially if the leveling and attachment system is super grindy. Now so far they seem to say that this is only going to be a cosmetic system, and that World War 3 won't feature any kind of pay-to-win elements. And thus far that appears to be the case. You can buy cosmetic items, and you can buy a season pass that will give you cosmetic items, but the game itself and the progression system is entirely free. My only concern with this is that if they start offering lots of weapon blueprints at reasonable prices, then if you kind of have to level up really hard to get certain attachments, but certain blueprints already have those attachments, you may start getting into this region kind of like Call of Duty Warzone, where people are buying these sort of blueprints as opposed to unlocking them themselves. So this is a concern, and time will tell, and the publisher behind this game are the same people who did Warface, so it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. Fundamentally though, their commitment thus far appears to be towards cosmetic customizations in-game, and there doesn't appear to be any kind of pay-to-win elements at the moment, except for this kind of grey area with weapon blueprints. But considering the entire title is entirely free, and the progression system thus far doesn't seem entirely too grindy, I don't think many people will take issue with it. So folks, that's it for my updated impressions on World War 3's closed beta test, and there's definitely more coverage of this game coming in the future. And so far so good. I mean, honestly, for a game that is releasing for free and at the moment has a very low entry point for early access, I think the gunplay alone is enough that most people will be satisfied, and the customization system is something that will make people satisfied as well. Only time will tell for the future of World War 3 whether some of the concerns I have over audio, animations, and how the financial structure of the game is set up will come to fruition, and it'll be yet to be seen, so to speak, as to whether or not this game can fully realize its potential. But if you're willing to overlook some of the shortfallings regarding audio and the animation system, and you're okay with the weapon blueprint system, then fundamentally this game is in a pretty good way in terms of the setup, and I think the gunplay is going to be something that's super attractive for most people. As always, folks, this has been a fantastic video. Again, if you want to try and support the channel and you're also interested in World War 3, check out the link in the description below. Again, full disclosure, that is an affiliate link with the guys over at My Games, and I do get a small amount of kickback if you do happen to select that link. But as always, thank you for watching, guys, and I'll catch you again in another video.